Business Credit Stack Like a Pro Business Funding Strategies training. I am excited about this training because if there's one question that I get asked more often than not is, Irv, how do I business credit stack? Is it legit? How should I go about doing it? Does it actually work? Is it efficient? And so in this training, I'm going to be breaking down a couple of things, but really what I hope to do is I want to help you think differently about the funding and how you actually want to set it up for your business. Now, the focal point that you're going to get is I'm going to give you my lens of how we walk our clients through their funding rounds, their funding sequences. And so the consensus that you'll get in this training is going to be all of that data compiled into this piece of content that you're going to get now. So I've seen more files, business credit profiles, and personal credit profiles than I know what to do with. And so you're getting a real boots on ground analysis of how this actually works. Now, the second thing that I want to bring up is there's levels to business credit stacking. I think that a lot of people, what they know and what they kind of get stuck on is just credit cards. There's a whole nother world outside of the 0% business credit cards. A lot of clients that we get in, they'll maybe start with the 0% business credit cards, but then we ultimately help them scale beyond that because there's another world to it. You have vehicle and equipment financing, you have business lines of credit, you have business term loans, you have SBA loans. And so we help them stack those products and really take this thing to the next level. So, with that in mind, here's what we are going to cover in this training: what business credit stacking actually is, the different levels of business credit stacking, funding frameworks and funding sequences. So this is going to be how you may want to think about setting yours up, which is how we set it up for our clients, in the time frame of how we're helping them get access to these credit lines, how to set up your business funding rounds the right way. So this is how you ultimately want to scale and ramp up, and then the pitfalls to avoid along the way that will get you denied. So big no-nos to avoid along the way. So with that in mind, let's get to work. So what is business credit stacking? This is the process of submitting multiple business or multiple credit card applications in a specific order with multiple banks in order to get access to large amounts of unsecured capital. So this right here is what a typical credit stacking layout looks like. And this is going to be Bank A, approved for a 0% business credit card. Bank B, you got approved for a 0% business credit card. And then Bank C, you got approved for a 0% business credit card. In a nutshell, that's what credit stacking is. And so if we wanted to take it a step further, we would say Bank A pulled from TransUnion, Bank B pulled from Experian Credit Bureau, and then Bank C pulled from the Equifax Credit Bureau. So that way you're kind of staggering, so to speak, your hard inquiries. But I wanted to really take it a step further and show you the different levels of credit stacking, or business credit stacking, I should say, because this is just going to be based around on the business side, not on the personal side of business credit stacking, of how the levels start to look when you start to scale up your funding. So you have what I call your beginner or entry level, which is what you may start out as and what you maybe tend to see a little bit more of, just because it's maybe the easiest route to get, right? It's the easiest approvals you can get. It's what I call low hanging fruit. So this is just one 0% business credit card, maybe at each bank or credit union that you're applying for. So I'll give you an example. This is a $20,000 0% business credit card at Bank A or Credit Union A, and a $20,000 0% business credit card at Bank B or Credit Union B. Now, the reason why I'm saying and or is because you can do a maybe funding round, just credit unions. You can do a funding round, just banks. You can have a blend where it's banks and credit unions. So you would insert your bank, right? So insert Bank A, Chase, insert Bank B, Wells Fargo, as an example. Insert Credit Union, Navy Federal, A, Credit Union B would be PenFed, as an example. So the total for this funding round, which again is a beginner, entry level, two products, $40K, and that's based off of $20,000 from each bank. Now, the novice level, or like a step above that, is when you have multiple 0% business credit cards at each bank or credit union. So, an example of that would be two $20,000 0% business credit cards at Bank A and two $20,000 0% business credit cards at Bank B. So this will put us at a total of $80,000 for this funding round, with it being $40,000 at each bank. Hopefully you're following so far. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit more advanced right here. Not too crazy, but it starts to get a little bit more advanced. 0% business credit cards, and you now have BLOCs, which are business lines of credit at each bank or credit union. So a real world example of this is right here. Two $20,000 0% business credit cards, one $45,000 business line of credit at Bank A or Credit Union A, one $20,000 0% business credit card, and one $45,000 business line of credit at Bank B or Credit Union B, for a grand total of $150,000 in this more advanced style of funding, with 85 coming from Bank A and 65 coming from Bank B. I'm probably wondering, why would a business need a revolving business line of credit versus just loading up on a bunch of business credit cards? Well, with business lines of credit, you're able to draw cash from it, meaning the amount of money that you get from a business line of credit, that fund actually hits your account. So the way that I want you to see it is the same way that you can see the amount of money inside of a savings and you can draw from it and maybe use that to transfer or wire out for a project or wire out for a big deal that you're landing or to pay out contractors, is the same way that it works for the business line of credit side, right? You can actually use that draw. That's real cash value. The way that differs, let me close that thought out before I get into this, because the way that differs, you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, can't you do that with the business credit card? You can't do that with the business credit card, because you'll either get hit with a cash advance, with the cash advance fee, which are pretty pricey, or the second route, which is what a lot of people want to do, is they'll maybe do a credit card liquidation. Now, banks are becoming privy to credit card liquidations. And so this is when somebody wants to run a business credit line through a friend's merchant account. And you may say, well, there's nothing illegal about that, but you're playing in the gray area. And anytime that you're playing in the gray area with the bank, if and when they catch on to it, they just say, you know what? We don't really want to deal with this type of client. And so let's close out, because we know that they're trying to game the system. Let's just go ahead and close out their accounts. And by the way, you still owe the balance to us for that amount that you liquidated. And when you pay us back, we don't want to do any business with you. Which is why you eventually want to graduate from that thought. Like, legit business owners eventually have to graduate from the thought of just using business credit cards and trying to liquidate them to try to find the next flip. And you want to really get good at setting up your business the right way, which is the whole purpose of this training and why this channel exists, so that you can get access to the ocean of funding products that are out there: term loans, SBA products, business lines of credit, business credit cards, equipment financing, the whole nine yard. I don't want anyone that I work with to settle for just getting access to business credit cards and then having to be in a circus trying to see, okay, how can I liquidate it because now I need to go buy a real estate deal. No. Get access to an actual business line of credit that we can use, because that's actual cash value that you can use to fund a project, to cover payroll. So with that in mind, if you're wondering, how does interest work on it? You only pay interest on the amount that you use. So if you use 10K on a 50K BLOC, then you're only paying interest on the 10K. Once that 10K is paid back, you have access to that revolving line again, so the full 50. So what I like about business lines of credit and why I like to stack them is because even though there's a time and a place for term loans, once you use a term loan, you have to then go out and apply for another term loan. But with the business line of credit, if I use 50K for a project, and let's say I get an invoice and I make that money back the following month and some, especially for like construction or like a real estate deal that I flipped my way in and out of, then I have access to that 50K line again next month. And the cool thing about it is you can also build that up. So the same way that you can build out a credit limit on the business credit card side, where if you started off with maybe a 30K limit, you used it for a couple months, and then all of a sudden they ascended you, and now you have access to a 45K limit because they bumped that limit up. Same thing happens on the business line of credit side, which is cool. Now with BLOCs, and I kind of hinted at it earlier, but you can use it to fund real estate deals, purchase material and equipment and supplies, fund payroll for employees or contractors, and you can front load future projects and bids versus having to wait to get paid out, or having to wait to get access to, or having to dive into your reserves or get access to that capital from this project. And you're scrambling around to then throw it into this project. With the credit line, I can just, okay, let me future pace it. Let me pick up that project and that project right there, because I know that once I get this net 45 paid out, I'm good to go, and I can just pay this account down and then go into my next project. It's a much easier way to scale. So funding frameworks. This is how you structure your funding for any given round. Now, the frameworks are specific to your business's geographic location. So this is where the business is operating. The revenue, this is either projected or true tax return numbers. Your industry slash or line of work. So this is the classification of the business being funded. The credit profile, both on the personal and on the business side, and the entity structure. Now, before I bring in this last piece of what a funding framework isn't, is I want to say this. I also want you to think of a funding framework as the products and the banks that are going to be used to acquire the funding. That's what a funding framework is. So, in a simple form, aside from this, is if I know I'm in the real estate space and I need access to $75,000 for maybe some Airbnb projects that I have coming up, then I am going to go after Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C. That, in a nutshell, is a funding framework. So, wanted to add some additional clarity on that. So, as you're thinking through it, you're able to see how this all pieces together. Now, a funding framework is not a one size fits all. I know that we like to pretend it is. I know that sometimes we surf on YouTube trying to get content. Heck, I'm out here putting out content for you. But the reason why I wanted you to know this piece is because I don't want you to get disappointed if what you tried for one LLC doesn't work for your second LLC, if maybe you have multiple entities, right? Reason for that is because the way that one entity is structured is going to have a completely different, the bank is going to have a completely different lending appetite for maybe if you have a real estate business versus you having a consulting business. Some banks may not want to touch the real estate business, but they'll want to go all in on the consulting, or vice versa. Some banks may say real estate or agriculture. Yeah, we can touch that. Let's rock. As a matter of fact, these are some of the products that we have specific to that business if you're investing in this area. Always good to know. And that's why I always tell our clients, hey, the way that you fund one business isn't always the way that you fund the second business, which is why you really want to know what you're doing inside and out, which is as you're setting up your funding frameworks, we always like to remind them of this piece right here, so that way you can reverse engineer it and then insert it into whatever it is that you're doing. So when it comes to a funding sequence, this is going to be the cadence or the timeline of how you go about with your funding frameworks. So remember what I mentioned earlier, that if I'm hitting Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C, that's my funding framework. My funding sequence is I'm hitting those banks and I'm looking to get access to this capital in the next 30 to 60 days. That's my sequence. That's my cadence. That's like my timeline, which is what you see here. In case you're wondering, what's the little image on there? I'm going to break it down for us here in a minute. An example of that is you plan on getting $75,000 in business credit or working capital, then you'll most likely need two funding frameworks or two sets of funding frameworks. If again we're playing a bit more, I would say conservative, and that'll take us about 90 to about 120 days, and that's more conservative. Could be way more than this. We're just giving ballpark numbers here, right? And so the way that this breaks down is the following: Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C. Let's say we'll hit it right here, and let's say we get a grand total of 50K. We're gonna have this rest and pause period. Now you're probably wondering, Irv, what is the purpose of a rest or a pause period? Why are we doing that? There's a couple things, like a philosophy that I have with this, and I want to give you my train of thought on it. Really twofold. Number one is I always like to see what was approved, what was denied, and how can we reassess. Before moving on to the next funding round, is there something on the first funding round? So let's say we went to Chase and they denied us for a business line of credit. And we know for a fact there's no way we should have been denied for a business line of credit. The business was dialed in. We provided tax returns. We flexed our liquidity muscle, which means we had about 15K sitting in the account. We have a 780 credit score. I've been banking with them for 2 years. There's no way we should have been denied. And so I am maybe hitting the reconsideration line. I'm speaking directly to a business banker. and I'm saying, okay, why were we denied? And I'm actually getting a thorough case of why we were denied. Oftentimes you'll see, oh, the reason you were denied was because the address that you put on here. Is this your address? No, that's not my address. My address is 123 Main Street. You guys had 123 ABC Street. That's my old address. Oh, sorry about that. Let's resubmit the application. And it doesn't cost you another inquiry. Versus if you would have kept going into maybe your next funding round, you would have burned another inquiry or you would have opened another account. Now Chase sees that, and when you try to go back, they'll say, okay, at this point, you're just credit fishing, or you have way too many accounts you're opening up too fast, because they're more, one, inquiry sensitive, and two, they're more new account sensitive. And so the less accounts that they see opened, the better it is in your case. Once you get access to that credit line, you can then go in and get access to future credit lines, right? So that's the first thought behind why you want to rest and pause here. The second reason is because, like anything else, you have access to this newfound capital. So, not like anything else, where do we deploy it? If you have a legitimate plan, before you go out and you start aggressively trying to acquire capital without knowing where it's going to go, because debt is, I like to refer to debt as a weapon. It can work for you or against you. Okay, we know for a fact that these next two projects are going to run us right around 45K. We have access to 50. Let's deploy this out into the market, and then let's move into our second funding round. So then we would hit either the second set of products at the same banks, or another three banks. So banks EFG. So we did ABC. We'll do banks DEF as an example, and then we'll rinse and repeat the process. Now, I do have some reasons for why you want to set up multiple funding rounds in these sequences. Is you don't want to get flagged by banks and lenders for what they call credit seeking, which is what I just broke down with Chase. You start to look desperate to them. This allows time for some organic spending with those new accounts. So there's nothing better and healthier to a bank than, let's say I have a business line of credit and I get access to that 35K line. I use 5K for payroll. I was able to receive my accounts for some projects that we did. We then pay off that account. I'm back up to a 100 or to 0% utilization, meaning all my accounts are paid off. They see, wait a minute, this person, or this business rather, has been, they've been with us for 30, 60 days. They've used up, let's say, less than 20% of the allotted amount, and they've paid it right back. That's how they start then measuring you as a risk indicator of they've been responsible. Let's bump them up a little bit more. Let's do 50. Okay, let's bump them up a little bit more. Let's do 65. And then what you can do to take it to the next level, I don't have it on here, but every 90 days you can go in for quarterly. You can go in for quarterly reviews. And so what you do is, hey, last 3 months, last 90 days when I came, I know that I mentioned my numbers were at 25K a month. We've actually doubled since, and we're actually at 50K a month. Here's my bank statements over the last 90 days, or here's some of the deposits that I've done into this account. And so I wanted you guys to review it so that we can, we have some big projects coming up. And so I wanted you guys to do a manual review so that we can go back out and acquire bigger projects, because I want to keep doing business with you. Awesome. You'd be surprised how many times a product gets bumped up without you having to burn an inquiry or having to go out and fish for more credit, just off that simple conversation and actually having documents and a legitimate business to actually prove that. You'll get a bump. Sometimes it's 100% bump, so you'll go from 25 to 50, 50 to 100. Sometimes it's smaller, sometimes it's 50 to 75, but it's usually easier to fish inside of the same, what I say, pond than it is to try to go out into an open ocean, right? So that's why I like having the organic spend on there. Next up is having too many new hard inquiries too quickly. That's a big red flag to the banks. Banks monitor too many new accounts that just opened. If you're wondering how do they do that, they use SPFE. They use not CoreLogic. They use SageStream on the personal side, because remember, you're personally guaranteeing all of these products. They use early warning systems as well, or early warning service, I should say, as well, EWS. They use them. And then lastly, you want to see what was approved and what was denied, and then readjust, which is what I broke down on that piece. So if you missed it, rewind, I'd say 2-3 minutes prior, and just listen to that sequence of how I broke that down, because that is crucial. Lastly is the pitfalls that you want to avoid when you are setting up, or when you're going after your business credit stacking, is that you're not submitting the right applications in the proper order. The next pitfall that I see is you're applying with in-property setup businesses. And so if you have an LLC, You have an EIN number that maybe doesn't match. Maybe I'll give you an example, real world example. We had a business owner that they were trying to apply for business credit, and they had actually changed the structure of their business. And so they went from a single member to a multi-member LLC. They made some actual structural changes inside of their LLC that required them to get a new EIN. They were still applying with the old EIN, even though that new EIN had been issued. And so the bank was like, wait a minute, like this business is like non-existent anymore. There's a new EIN attached to this LLC, and that's why they kept getting denied. Which is to some people it may be the smallest thing, but to the bank it makes all the difference. Which is why you always want to pay attention to how my business is structured. Super important. Banks or lending institutions don't have lending appetite for your industry. I see this all the time when people are going after real estate, construction, trucking, manufacturing, e-commerce. A lot of banks don't like to touch it, at least the way that they're set up, or at least the way that they're positioned to the eyes of the bank. And so you have two options: reposition the business properly, which depending on when I drop this video, we have a separate video or separate training coming out just for that here on YouTube. Or the second way that you can do it is just find a different bank that truly wants to deal with your line of work or your business. And so never hurts to go in, sit down. I tell my clients this all the time. Whether you're working with our business bankers that we have vetted inside of our program, inside of our network, or when you are going out to meet with the business banker, flat out ask them, what type of businesses do you guys is mainly composed in your lending portfolio? That's huge to know. Because if I see that they are real estate, construction, trucking, this is my home. If I see that it's consulting, education, and health, may not be the place for me, regardless of what I'm seeing online. Because again, no two businesses are alike. So just because somebody else got approved for it doesn't mean your business is going to get approved for it. Sometimes you're always one or two questions away from seeing if it's going to be worth your time or not. Because your time as a business owner is valuable. Applying for too many credit lines too quickly, so this is known as shotgunning applications. You want to space them out properly. Remember the cadence, 30 to right around a 60-day cadence per funding round. Next is submitting mismatching information on multiple credit applications. Banks are going to red flag that all day. So if my name is Urban Pena and I am a junior and I leave the junior out on the applications, and Social Security office has me as junior, the DMV office has me as junior, my state records, my birth certificate has me as junior, and I leave off junior on the application, that'll get me flagged. If I am a business owner and I am on the operating agreement, but I'm not on the articles of organization for whatever reason, and I go to present that to the bank, they say, wait a minute, there's mismatching information here. Are you or are you not an owner? Yeah, I'm on the operating agreement. Well, you're not on the articles of organization. Okay, let's go update that right now with the state. Next up, second to last, is filling out the credit application information incorrectly. Wherever you see, and we have a full training on this, I'll probably pin it in this video, but wherever you see questions on the credit application, you want to see what it is that you're filling out. You have the personal part of the business credit application, and then you have the business part of the business credit application. I see a lot of times where business owners, where it says income, they'll put their personal income, which is where the business revenue goes. And I know that you're probably thinking, Irv, that's so elementary. Who doesn't know that? You'd be surprised because people aren't dealing with this day in, day out. They may be good at what they do, but when it comes to this, it's maybe another language to them, right? Or even the other side of it, when they're asking you for collateral or they're asking you for assets. If you have a business, and this is, I want to say not uncommon, but it's definitely a little bit less common depending on your level of business. And you're maybe trying to go for like a corporate guarantee, or you're trying to kind of like cross pollinate your businesses. You want to be really careful with that, because I'll see where a business owner, they have real estate that they try to put up as collateral, but the LLC, I'm sorry, or the real estate is inside of another entity. And sometimes when you try to cross pollinate that and you don't actually tell the bank what it is that you're doing, they're going to look it up on county, or they're going to look it up wherever that transaction occurred, and they're going to see, wait a minute, it's attached to another entity, or it's attached to another company. So if you don't let them know ahead of time what it is that you're doing, one, you'll get denied altogether, or two, they just may say, wait a minute, this is a fraudulent application. And so if you're trying to use maybe an asset, and there's a certain way you want to set it up, but if you're trying to use an asset from another business or from another corporation, let them know, hey, look, I own these assets on this column. These are the titles. These are the deeds. I am part owner in that business, and we want to see if we can use that as collateral moving into maybe this business. Again, that's more of that's a bit more higher level. That right there is more of a corporate guarantee versus just a personal guarantee. But it is a game that you can start venturing into as you start to scale. And then lastly, applying with a weak or thin credit profile. I'd say if you have to typically ask, what does the credit need to be for you to apply for a funding product, your credit's probably too low. And I say that with love. Like, believe me, I've been there before. I see it all the time. Where does my credit need to be? If you're asking that, your credit's probably too low. And so typically, whenever I see somebody asking that, their credit's in the low 600s. If it's anything less than 680, less than 3 accounts on your credit profile, primary accounts, not AUs, authorized users, primary accounts, and you have, I'd say, with the average account of being less than 3K, then it is a weak, thin profile. You want it to be well above 3 accounts. You want the age to be well above 3 years, like the rules of three. Above 3 years, above three primary accounts, and above 3K on average for all of your accounts. That's typically when you want to start venturing into personally guaranteeing on behalf of your business. Anything prior to that, I would highly recommend keep building out your personal credit first before you try to maybe business credit stack, because that's when you start getting those weak limits like $1,000, $2,000. That's gone like this in business. So that is essentially it when it comes to business credit stacking like a pro. I wanted to give you the ins and the outs, what to expect realistically, and also how to set it up, and hopefully a framework that you can scale into versus maybe just playing at a lower level, which is just business credit cards and having to feel like you constantly have to liquidate stuff when there is an open sea of legitimate products that you can use to truly scale your business to that next level. So if you found value in this content, consider hitting that like button down below. Share it with an entrepreneur because it does help us reach a larger audience of entrepreneurs. We've been growing because of your word of mouth, and we truly appreciate that. But other than that, I will see you in the next video. Bye.